This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio. I'm Michael D. Day, and we've got Charles Showalter reporting with the Union Wedge for Baton Rouge Labor Radio. This is a new addition to our 7 o'clock hour, and we'd like to thank Charles Showalter and his whole crew up there in Pittsburgh. So here is the Union Edge with comprehensive interviews.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio. Thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just type in the Union Edge. And right now from Politico, we have a new guest, Lucy McClernand. And Lucy, welcome to Union Edge.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You were recently just part of an article about immigration, Cesar Chavez, and right. the actor that played Cesar Chavez in a recent movie. Talk to us a little bit about how this is bringing attention back to the immigration issue.
Sure. Well, it's a new film that's actually directed by actor Diego Luna, and the film is entitled Cesar Chavez, and it's based on, the labor activist efforts in the late 1960s to organize California farm workers and to also protest for higher pay. And it was premiered yesterday in Washington, D.C. at the museum. And, Mr. Luna, as well as the actors and actresses who are involved with the film, drew a lot of parallels to his efforts for farm workers to the movement for immigration reform today, mobilizing the community and trying to give that voice to pushing, in Mr. Chavez's case, pushing for higher pay, and today sort of pushing to get lawmakers in support of immigration reform.
A lot of those parallels are very applicable, I believe. As a former immigration enforcement officer, I can tell you we've got a broken system here in the United States. A lot of things can be done better. And I'm personally of the opinion we're not going after the right people. We should not be going after those people that get trafficked into the United States, and all too often that's what it is. It's not necessarily something else. But we have people here in the United States, American citizens, who unscrupulously hire undocumented aliens, or people that are out of status that were one time in status, and they do it deliberately so they can pay these individuals below minimum wage and have them working under some, quite honestly, horrific working conditions. What are people across the U.S. saying about this movie and its impact on what potential changes to immigration will have?
Well, there was a huge response at the film last night, which also included a panel discussion with Diego Luna, as well as Rosario Dawson and America Ferrera, who both appear in the film as well. Now, one of the parallels that you see in the movie is the issue of amnesty and undocumented workers, which was a challenge that that Cesar Chavez faced as well while trying to unite the workers themselves. One other particular thing, too, is the nonviolent tactics in which Cesar Chavez employs, specifically his 25-day fast. We're seeing that be employed by immigration advocacy groups such as Fast for Families, which the President and Mrs. Obama paid visit to in December during the time that they were fasting in D.C. But America Ferrera she's been very vocal about immigration reform and the need for legislation. However, one of the things that she highlighted was simply going to the polls and voting. And Rosario Dawson as well emphasized that point, specifically in the midterm elections, which will be coming up in November. America Ferrera cited the fact that, more Latinos showed up to vote in 2012 and sort of urged people to keep up that momentum, and therefore that would kind of send the message that people support immigration reform and want to see this passed.
I agree. The polls consistently show that Americans, left, right, top, bottom, down the middle, want something done. We get it. We understand it. Unfortunately, some of our political types, those political wonks that get elected, they're not paying attention. They're not listening. In your opinion, Lucy, what do we got to do to get that to happen?
Well, I think the issue, again, it goes back to the fact that, as the actor said, that there's a community there that can be mobilized. I mean, if people do want to see this type of legislation go through, they kept sort of echoing the legacy of Cesar Chavez in the sense of being able to mobilize a community and going beyond the Latino community as well, as what America Ferrera said too, that immigration reform is an issue that's not just within the Latino community, that affects every single American. And she said that, there needs to be a better job in telling that story and letting every American know that this is an issue for them. Just sort of their suggestion was to keep mobilizing, to keep organizing, and to keep this a vocal issue in communities.
Do you think this is going to have any impact on Congress?
Well, it's funny. Again, Diego Luna sort of said it is a film, so first and foremost, it's for entertainment. But if it can draw attention to those issues, obviously it had a premiere in D.C. Representative Xavier Becerra was there. It's going to be screened at the White House tomorrow. So I think if it, it may draw attention to, communities where immigration reform legislation can impact them. I think it's sort of left to be seen, though, how impactful it will be to lawmakers in D.C.
Well, at least hopefully we can get their attention. Maybe we can get John Boehner to go see it. I don't know. That's another story. Good luck with that one. Lucy, anything else we should take away from this today?
I just think, like I said, I attended the premiere last night, and I think sort of no matter what side you're sort of on in this debate for immigration reform, one of the things that again, Diego Luna and both America Ferrera and Rosario Dawson emphasized was sort of the parallels that can be drawn. The tagline for the movie was "Si se puede," which obviously was, the rallying that Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers movement used, and she said that was a huge component of Barack Obama's campaign in 2008, yes, we can. So again, just sort of drawing the parallels between a film and a movement in the late 1960s that can sort of be seen today as well.
Absolutely. Lucy, how do we find out more about you and what you write for Politico?
Well, please check out our site, Politico.com. We've got new content up every day. Like I said, the film will be premiering tonight at the White House, so if there's any sort of reaction or, results from that, we'll definitely be having it on the site.
Fantastic. And if you tweet it out, we'll retweet it for you, okay?
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Lucy McCalmont of Politico. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Labor's Talk Radio.
Have you had your daily minimum requirement of triclosan today? How about your dosage of triclocarban? Chances are you have, but don't know it. These two are antimicrobial chemicals, which might sound like a good thing, except that they disrupt the human body's normal regulatory processes. Animal studies show, for example, that these triclos can be linked to the scrambling of hormones in children, disruption of puberty and of the reproductive system, decreases in thyroid hormone levels that affect brain development and other serious health problems. Yet corporations have slipped them into all sorts of consumer products, pushing them with a blitz of advertising that claim the antibacterial ingredients prevent the spread of infections. The two chemicals were originally meant for use by surgeons to cleanse their hands before operations. But that tiny application has now proliferated like a plague, constantly exposing practically everyone to small amounts here, there, and everywhere, adding up to dangerous megadoses. Triclosan and triclocarban were first mixed into soaps, but then, boom, brand-name corporations went wild, putting these hormone disruptors into about 2,000 products, including toothpaste, mouthwashes, fabrics, and, most astonishingly, even into baby pacifiers. Today, use of the chemicals is so prevalent that they can be found in the urine of 3/4 of Americans. They also accumulate in groundwater and soil, so they saturate our environment and eventually ourselves. One study found them in the breast milk of 97% of women tested. This is Jim Hightower saying, for decades, corporate lobbying and regulatory meekness let this chemical menace spread. But now, the Food and Drug Administration is finally questioning the continued use of the two triclos. For more information and action, go to the Natural Resources Defense Council, nrdc.org.
Hightower's commentary is brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown. From Wall Street to Washington, this monthly newsletter reveals who's doing what to whom and why. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Albert Klein. The Obama administration has begun working with the Commerce Department on transitioning to third-party oversight of the Internet, a plan that has been in place since 1998. However, Fox News hosts use this opportunity to falsely claim that President Obama is giving away the Internet. On Fox's America's News headquarters, host Greg Jarrett said,
in the 1960s, this thing was developed with American money by the Department of Defense. Taxpayers paid for this whole thing. So why should the Obama administration or one president make a decision to give away something that has been probably one of the greatest world inventions ever by Americans?
As the New York Times explained, the U.S. has been subcontracting the assignment of Internet addresses to the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers since 1998. ICANN was created as an international nonprofit organization with the expectation that the U.S. would eventually step back from its role. For more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
When Dad needed help getting around, I became his driver. Soon enough, it was up to me to be his housekeeper and financial manager, too. When he moved in, I became his cook and even his nurse. But no matter what roles I play, I know I'm still his daughter.
We understand the roles you play. So to help, we created aarp.org/caregiving, where you can connect with experts and other caregivers. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 66, works with builders and contractors to build a better community. Local 66's tradesmen and women have received the specialty training needed to meet the complex challenges of any project, making them the most capable workforce in the region. From schools, highways, and pipeline projects to casinos and arenas, the operating engineers build any job, large or small. For over 100 years, Local 66 has provided superior service that our community can count on. They are your one-stop resource for qualified and productive operating engineers and heavy equipment mechanics. To learn more about the benefits of organized labor and more information about the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 66, go to www.iuoe66.org. That's www.iuoe66.org.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio. Thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate that. Please go to our website, theunionedge.com. Join our e-activist newsletter. You need some help? Let us know. We'll get the word out. If you can help somebody else, we'll get the word out about that too. It's a great thing. It's what solidarity is all about. And right now, from Media Matters, we've got Angelo Carusone. Angelo, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Now, you know, we have talked a lot about Mitch McConnell. We're broadcasting in Kentucky, and we're darn glad to be doing that. But Mitch McConnell is getting backed by a talk show host. Doesn't everybody realize that you're supposed to stay away from talk show hosts? They're all big egos. They don't know what they're talking about, and they're just trouble.
They definitely can be trouble. I mean, and they, certainly, and that's. And they can also be helpful. I think it depends on the strategy that they're employing. And, you know, in this case, you know, it's not surprising that talk show hosts, you know, obviously support and endorse candidates. That's normal. I think the bigger question comes up when the candidate embraces the host. And then the question is whether or not there's an issue of appropriateness there. And
you know, that was a scary picture right there. Mitch McConnell giving me a hug. But that's another story. Go ahead.
In this case, the radio personality, who is also a columnist for National Review, Dennis Prager, has, you know, he's remarked, and he's got a long history on, you know, pushing back against the push for marriage equality with some of the more outrageous comments, like, you know, comparing it to polygamy and bestiality, and then he is an advocate for essentially pushing on women to, and he's argued repeatedly that it is a woman's obligation to have sex with their husband regardless of what their mood is, and doesn't think that mood should ever be a factor. Finds it inappropriate, offensive, troublesome that somebody would allow their mood to get in the way of their wifely duties. And has repeatedly made that argument. And what's interesting here is that in the context of, McConnell showing up at the fundraiser, participating in it alongside Prager, and really embracing him here, one of the key issues at stake in that election right now is the fact that there's, an exodus and an even stronger push we're seeing women move even further than they ordinarily do from Republicans to Democrats in that district. And so it's becoming a major election issue. And yet here you have McConnell making the calculus to sort of double down on this approach. And that's definitely revealing.
I have to ask, Mitch McConnell's a married man. And has he talked about this with his wife?
You'd think, right? That, it's not that this guy just made this comment as a one-off. This is, this is Prager's philosophy. This is his approach. He believes that that women are being duped by a liberal media and college into thinking that.
Oh, wait a second. He's Dennis Prager is also saying that the college education is inhibiting women from doing their wifely duties.
Yes, because it convinces them that they should want careers, when in fact a woman's natural predisposition is not to have a career. This would be Prager's argument.
Angela, we've got to run a public service announcement right now for all of our Republican friends out there. Dude, don't go there. Don't go there. Don't. We need to get a PSA from Elena Chao, who is Mitch McConnell's wife, the former Secretary of Labor here in the United States. We need to get Madam Secretary. Will you do a PSA for us, please?
That's right. No, that's the thing. It's like it just adds. There's so many layers here. It's almost as if you have to ignore everything about. You have to have completely abandoned any shred of self-awareness and irony in order to engage in these in this, right? Here's McConnell, not just accepting money, and this is a big ticket fundraiser. They're raising. The plates are going for $15,000 to $30,000.
Cha-ching.
And here we have. A guy that's headlining it, whose essential his career is built around this idea of pushing this philosophy that women are in fact naturally predisposed to being at home, that they are not in fact equal, and that they should just embrace it. That anything to the contrary is a consequence of liberal media and college. And then he goes so far as to make the argument that the effect of all of this, so if we were to impose and get to a place where we had more gender equality, more marriage equality, a slightly more civil society, that in fact that's definitionally fascism, according to Dennis Prager. And here you have Mitch McConnell, who is one of the highest-ranking people in the Republican Party, suffering and dealing with his own political challenges at home on this very issue, lining right up and embracing him. And either he's desperate for cash or it's a reflection of his own political philosophy to an extent. And it's not that hard of a reach, given that he's already on the record as being, very strongly opposed to equal pay for equal work legislation. So it's definitely an interesting, note. And he should probably look to Texas, where, Greg Abbott is in trouble and has been dealing with his own political consequences for a relationship that he has with Ted Nugent. So, the two are not entirely, that far apart in terms of, the similarities here. Here you have a candidate who's embracing somebody whose philosophy is largely at odds with the majority of society. It's more than just a political issue. It gets to decency.
Again, we have to revise the sheet that we give to all of our Republican friends. Don't talk about trans anything. And equal pay for equal work, men and women, that's a good thing. But mood sex, no, guys, stay away from that one. We got to get Elena Chao Madam Secretary, please, we need you to do a PSA for our Republican friends. This is one they need to stay away from. Angela, I don't get it. I don't understand. We're being a little bit facetious here, but quite honestly, for Mitch McConnell to be associated with this and not take that step back and say, no, this is inappropriate, is wrong, and it, my goodness gracious sakes alive, what, the women in Kentucky are going to be voting for him because their husbands tell them to?
That's right, and this isn't even a stretch. If you look at everything that they've said, leading up to the 2008 election and beyond, right? I mean, even the most casual interaction that President Obama had throughout his life, somebody that he brushed elbows with in the hallway became a controversial figure in his past, and they would analyze everything that person ever said to determine what the influence and effect was on the president and if it was a secret insight into his worldview. Even if there was no actual association or embrace, so in many ways that's their approach. They look at that approach, and they look at even the most loosest affiliations. Here we have a situation where they're lining up arm in arm to achieve the same political purpose, and we're not supposed to draw any conclusions from that, right? And I think that if they just look at their own analytical lens and analyze the situation, it says an awful lot about about Mitch McConnell just by looking at what Dennis Prager stands for and what he's advocating for. I mean, this is his bread and butter. This isn't just these aren't just aside comments. This is his wheelhouse. This prevention of fascism in America as he defines it, and he defines fascism as equal pay for equal work and gender equality and marriage equality. So.
And at that point in time, you have to wonder, why are women not calling up Dennis Prager's advertisers and saying, hey, you know what? Ain't going to happen, babe.
Well, the person who's actually hosting the fundraiser, Prager is the one who's speaking it. He's the headliner, but the actual person who put the money up is the owner of Salem Communications, who is a very strong and avowed, conservative, engaging in politics. He comes at it from a Christian perspective and wants to sort of evangelize, and that's how he got into the radio biz, was to sort of spread the word. But for the most part, he aligns the Salem Communications apparatus with
witch
political.
Hunts?
What's that?
Witch hunts? Salem witch hunts?
Right, I know. So it's his own boss seems to really like it, but it obviously has consequences. I mean, they're really pushing Prager hard this cycle, along with his Hugh Hewitt, who's sort of his partner in crime over there, and they sort of occupy the same space, and it definitely says a lot about the state of the communications arm of sort of the larger partisan apparatus.
Absolutely. Listen, Angelo, we've got to get going. How do we find out more about what you do for Media Matters?
MediaMatters.org.
There we go, brother. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.
Angelo Carusone of Media Matters. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Labor's Talk Radio.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
We can't survive on 725. We can't survive on 725. We can't survive on 725. No more wage theft. No more wage theft. No
McDonald's workers in Raleigh, North Carolina, joining with their brothers and sisters in several states on Tuesday to protest alleged wage theft by McDonald's. The workers struggling for $15 an hour and the right to form unions without employer intimidation turned out Tuesday to demand that McDonald's stop practices the workers say amount to wage theft. Class action lawsuits were filed last week in California, New York, and Michigan, alleging the wage theft and demanding that McDonald's pay the workers what they say they are owed and stop the wage-stealing practices. Americans United for Change is going on an 18-city bus tour dubbed Give America a Raise. The tour, supporting President Obama's call to raise the minimum wage, starts March 24th in Maine and will end April 3rd in Washington, D.C. A 16-ton anti-poverty billboard on wheels will travel to 10 key states. The bus tour will feature low-wage workers, labor leaders, including AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka, U.S. Labor Secretary Tom Perez, some U.S. senators, and political candidates. It's been 5 years since the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour has been raised. In Burlington, Vermont, union bus drivers are on strike. Teamsters Local 597 says the drivers will stay off the job as long as it takes to get a fair labor contract. About 10,000 riders a day depend on the bus drivers, including students in Burlington schools. So far, no new contract talks are scheduled. The drivers started their strike on Monday. Denver Super Shuttle drivers have been struggling for 2 years to get a union contract. The CWA members have rejected a 30% pay cut proposal from the company, which would have slashed their pay so low that many would have qualified for food stamps, Medicaid, and other public assistance. Now the company is imposing that cut on them. An online petition at MoveOn.org is supporting the drivers. The 6th annual Progressive Wisconsin Grassroots Network Festival is coming up March 22nd in Mazomanie, Wisconsin. Messaging for Democracy is this year's theme. Wisconsin Grassroots Network's Nate Tim says the mission of the group is to help set up grassroots groups and get people engaged in social and political action.
Our mission is to establish grassroots groups throughout the state of Wisconsin. We are also working outside of the boundaries of the state, but that's our primary mission, to engage people, to get them engaged in their civic affairs of their community, because that's the only way people can push back against the enormous amount of money that's now shaping our political reality.
Workers Independent News is proud to be heard on The Union Edge, Labor's Talk Radio. Live nationwide weekdays noon to 3 p.m. at theunionedge.com.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Confessions of a Potentially Perfect Parent, brought to you by adoptuskids.org.
I don't know how to talk like a parent. Don't make me come back there. You see what I mean? It's pretty awful. Try it again. Don't make me come back there. Now that's pretty good. That one kind of sounded like my dad. Weird.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. Call 1-888-200-4005 or visit adoptuskids.org for more information. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
My name is Dale Pazinski. I'm 19 years old, and this is how I live united. I've always been kind of a computer geek, and I found a way to use those skills to help the homeless in my community. For people facing hard times, computer skills and a basic resume are so important. It may seem like a small thing, but it makes a huge difference in people's lives. So with United Way, I created a program where I work with the homeless. Together, we go through their whole job history, write a resume, and then save it on their very own USB drive. We provide workbooks and training certificates. I even budgeted for cupcakes so we can celebrate as a class when one of our people gets a job. That's huge. When somebody says, "Hey man, that job that you helped me apply for, I got it." That's what Living United feels like to me. My name is Dale Pazinski. I help people achieve financial independence. So I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
This is Dave from the Dave Matthews Band for RAD. When you go out and party, get drunk, then drive, you're not only loaded, you're a loaded weapon. When you celebrate, designate. Choose a designated driver. Remember, music lives, and so should you.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
I knew I was stuck at this kid's house for the night. I decided to just go to sleep and get the night over with. But those guys came into the bedroom and got into a massive pillow fight. But let me tell you, it's not easy falling asleep when a sweaty little kid falls on you every 5 seconds. Even after the lights went out, Raleigh and his friends stayed up. A bunch of them snuck up on me to try and pull a hand in a bowl of warm water trick. Well, that was enough for me. I went downstairs to sleep in the basement even though it was pitch black. I left my sleeping bag upstairs and that was a mistake, because it was freezing. I think it was probably the longest night of my life. When the sun came up this morning, I found out the reason it was so cold. I was sleeping right by the sliding glass door, and some fool had gone and left it open overnight. That really stunk, because if I knew there was a way to escape last night, I definitely would have taken it. To read more about the sleepover, check out Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Last Straw by Jeff Kinney. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library, and visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
In times of crisis, first responders are there for us. But who do they rely on? It's the men and women of the Utility Workers Union of America, ensuring our hospitals have reliable electricity, that our communities have a secure water supply, safe gas lines, and other critical services. We're the safest and most skilled workers in the industry. Utility workers, delivering vital services and a brighter future.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio. Thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Hey, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just type in The Union Edge. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I pay attention. I pay very close attention to the comments that I get. And yesterday, I got a comment on our website asking, a little bit about our program, what we do. And a guy by the name of Mike Day, he's from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, introduced himself. Now, he's a retiree. And I'm sure he thinks us Northerners talk a little bit funny, but that's okay because we'll work that out. We're all union folks, by the way. And Mike is the host of Baton Rouge Labor Radio down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mike, welcome to Union Edge, man.
Hey, thanks, Charles. Now, I am a host every other week. Neil Paul Miller, our business manager, Plumbers and Steamfitters, Local 198 in Baton Rouge, does the other week. And, I read about your show on AFL-CIO Now blog. And I said, man, this is great. These guys are really doing it big time. But we are on WTQT.org Saturdays live, 7 to 9 a.m. The first hour may be pre-recorded with something, and the second hour is always live.
Well, and Mike, one of the things we talked about is you said that you guys need some help with some more national content, and so we're going to start sending you an hour every week.
Hey, and we're going to run it every week, Charles. We're so grateful to the union brothers and sisters to the north. I'm in a right-to-work state, Charles.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
We've been fighting that since 1976, and we've got the infamous Governor Jindal down here that never saw a microphone he didn't love to say that he wasn't running for president on. But, we've taken steps, and all our local is working. We're blessed with a lot of work down here. But we're trying to spread the union message that, hey, live better, work union.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I get it. You got a right-to-work state. And, unfortunately, those people that bring it in, they do damage to the local economy. There's less tax dollars available for cops, firemen, paramedics, repairing roads, and everything else we need to have a smooth-running community. And quite frankly, even for businesses, it's a short-term, they get a little bit more return on their investment, so to speak, for the first couple years or so. But after a while, they start to suffer too. So it's a foolish game. It's a shell game. It's playing games with finances and money, and the whole community ends up losing because of that. And we understand that, and we're going to help educate people in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I got to tell you, man, we're excited about this, and our tech people are talking to your tech people. And this coming week, you're going to have an hour from the Union Edge, Labor's Talk Radio, for WTQW down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Hey, we're looking forward to it, and we appreciate the alliance with such a great bunch of union professionals from Pittsburgh, Charles. I'm so glad we made contact. To be honest with you, Charles, I didn't know if I was going to get a response to my email or not, but you were right on it, and we really appreciate it. We can use all the help from the professional union people that we can get, because Neil and I are we're journeyman pipe fitters and welders, and we're trying to carry the message as best we can, but it can nowhere match what a professionally trained person can do.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, the one thing about radio is the more it sounds like a couple people having a cup of coffee, and the more passionate they are about what they're talking about, the better off we all are. And, Mike, you know it as well as I do. A third of our membership, they're Republicans, a third are Democrats, a third are independents. All are welcome. We've got a big tent. And when it's all said and done, we're here to support the community. It's not about me, me, me. It's all about we, us, and ours, and how we can help others.
That's it. And you know, Charles, you were bringing up, we are in a right-to-work state, but I will tell you this, that we're blessed with an abundance of work from my local jurisdiction. $85 billion worth of industrial work is on the books for this year alone. And we're having contractors that went with those initialed, those ABCers and the initials, and they flat out came to our union hall for contractors, subcontractors, and they said, you know what? We're not in the training business. The people they're sending out to us are not trained, just flat out not trained, and we let them know that the United Association of Plumbers and Steam Fitters has been training apprentices for over 100 years, and that was our business. And that we supply our own annuity, our own health care, our own retirement, and we fund our own training program.
Right.
And you know what? Those guys walked away and left job referrals on our business manager's desk.
Right. And on top of that, like all the other building trades, you engage in supporting directly the fine men and women who have served this country in the military with the Helmets to Hard Hats program.
Helmets to Hard Hats. You got it, Charles.
It's an awesome program. You guys do great work, and God bless you for doing that. We really appreciate it. Now, listen, Mike, we're getting ready to come towards the end of it, so I want to make sure that we get the information about your radio station down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
We're on WTQT.org for the listeners, if anyone wants to listen in Iron City beer country. We're on, you can also pick up rebroadcast on YouTube, Baton Rouge Labor Radio. I would love to have some friends on my Facebook from Pittsburgh. I've got a few former Pittsburghians there. But I'm Michael D. Day on Facebook, or they can go to our local Baton Rouge Local Union 198 on Facebook and friend us there. And they can pick up rebroadcasts there. And, Charles, we appreciate the outreach with the Union Edge Radio, where we're going to be running some of you guys' content. And I mean, we're just tickled all over about it.
Well, there you go. And I tell you what, we gotta have a couple conversations. But this coming Saturday, what time slot are you putting us into?
Oh, well, you'll be in the 7 a.m. hour. That's daylight savings time.
Okay, so 7 o'clock local in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on 106.1 FM.
106.1 FM. You better to catch it on the stream way up there. But it's WTQT.org, or we're WTQT 106.1 FM.
There we go. Michael, hey, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Michael Day of Pipe Fitters, or the Pipe Trades, Local 198 down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and WTQT 106.1 FM. It's Baton Rouge Labor Radio. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Labor's Talk Radio.
I'm Barry Craig for the Union Edge Labor's Talk Radio. More than a century of local labor history is painted on the flood wall in Paducah, Kentucky. Union labor built a lot of Paducah, including this flood wall, said Jeff Wiggins, president of the Paducah-based Western Kentucky AFL-CIO Area Council. It's appropriate that our history is here for everybody to see. Working people are the subject of a mural on the tall concrete high-water barrier decorated with several scenes of Paducah history. The artwork highlights the old Ohio River City's traditional Labor Day parade, one of the oldest such processions in the country. According to Wiggins, the first parade was in 1893, America's first Labor Day parade was just 11 years earlier. A number of unions, union members, and others chipped in $12,500 for the 12 by 20-foot panel created by critically acclaimed muralist Robert Dafford of Lafayette, Louisiana. Glenn Dowdy, a former area council president, led the mural project, according to Wiggins, who is also president of Steelworkers Local 9447. Dowdy said the fund drive began in 2001 after the council approved the project. The council began in 1892 when it was chartered as the Paducah Central Labor Union. The CLU was an affiliate of the American Federation of Labor, which started in 1886. Eventually, the Paducah CLU became the Paducah Central Labor Council. The CLC became the area council after the merger of the American Federation of Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations in 1955. The CLU hosted the first Paducah Labor Day parades. The processions continued through World War II, then ended. Several union activists, including Dowdy, organized the Western Kentucky Labor Day Committee, an all-volunteer group, and resurrected the processions in 1975. The Floodwall mural depicts a parade from the 1970s. Union members are marching with a banner emblazoned with solidarity, the old Union byword. The artwork shows the faces of several union leaders from Paducah, including the late W.C. Young, a national union and civil rights leader, who appears just above the letter T on the banner. The highest honor the council bestows is the annual W.C. Young Award. Young earned the first award in 1994. Wiggins is this year's Young Award recipient. I'm Barry Craig for the Union Edge, Labor's Talk Radio.
Members of the American Postal Workers Union handle more than 165 billion letters and packages a year. That's about 34 million pounds of mail every day. Ever wonder what this costs you as a taxpayer? Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions? Not a single cent. The United States Postal Service doesn't run on your tax dollars. It's funded solely by stamps and postage. Brought to you by the men and women of the American Postal Workers Union.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Labor's Talk Radio. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just type in The Union Edge. Joining us now, we have Doug Cunningham of Workers Independent News. Doug, welcome back.
Hey, Charles. Good to be here.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. And, I don't know if you caught the good news or not, but we just got picked up by another radio station, WTQT, down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Hey, fantastic. Way to go, man.
And I have volunteered to go down and sample the food.
yeah, you and me too. The music too, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're excited about this. But, Doug, what's going on?
I want to give America a raise today.
Okay.
I want to talk about wage inequality, income inequality, and some of the things that are being done about it. We had in the Workers Independent Newscast today, we had a story about a 10-state bus tour that's going to kick off in a few days on March 24th called Give America a Raise, and they're focused on the minimum wage. 18 cities this tour is going to hit. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka is going to be there, U.S. Labor Secretary Tom Perez. Some low-wage workers are going to be along for the ride with some U.S. senators and some political candidates, all making the point that we need to raise the minimum wage, the federal minimum, $7.25 an hour now, and it hasn't been raised in 5 years. But more importantly than just the minimum wage, workers have been taking it on the chin for a long time now in terms of wages. Wages have been decoupled from productivity. And giving America a raise seriously across the board for all working people in this country would be a wonderful way to stimulate the economy and do a world of good for us in this country after many, many years of flat or even sometimes declining wages for working families.
It's very interesting to me that, this raising the minimum wage makes so much sense. And, if you went back to 1960 and you said, this is what people are making, you extrapolate that out into what people should be making today, it's what, $22, something like that? Henry Ford got it right back in 1914. Hey, I'm going to pay my people $5 a day.
And this isn't just like labor union spin or anything like that, because you look at what economists have to say about this. The Economic Policy Institute, for example, they took a look in a study that they did between 1979 and 2007. The top 1% in this country took home well over half of the total increase in U.S. income. 53.9% of the increase in income during those years went to the top 1%. Now, in terms of actual wages being flat or falling, between 2000 and 2007, median family income actually went down.
Right.
That's the first time that it happened, since World War II. So this inequality that we're talking about is very real, and it's very damaging in many ways to the overall economy, and certainly to working people who aren't being rewarded enough for their hard work. So that issue is extremely important. And McDonald's workers yesterday were out. That's another facet of this whole income inequality thing. They were out protesting the wage theft they're alleging at McDonald's. They were in several cities talking about they can't survive on the wages that they earn, but also that McDonald's is allegedly guilty of practices that end up stealing even those meager wages from people. And we can't continue like this in America. First of all, it's un-American, not to reward hard work. And secondly, it's just not sustainable for our economy. We can't grow like we need to grow as long as wages remain so flat like this, and as long as income inequality persists like this.
I agree. And, Doug, I look at this, I look at some of the reactions from some of the political pundits, but, if you talk to a small business owner, they get it, and they understand, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, they if you're a small business owner, you may have to pay your folks a little bit more money. You should have been doing it anyway, but that's another story. But when working folks, working stiffs like you and I, we get a couple extra bucks in our pocket, what do?
Yeah,
do we send it off to our Swiss bank account?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. No, we go out and spend it. We spend it in the community. There's that one yard project that we want to work on. We take the kids out to a Saturday afternoon movie. Maybe we start thinking seriously about replacing the car a year early. This kind of thing. That money gets spread around in the community with the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and it makes sense for small business, because what happens is a small business gets more business, and then they have to hire more people.
That's right. They get more customers,
Right.
And people, working people usually have lists of things that they would like to do. They just don't have the money right now to do it, right? I mean, people have their eyes on home improvements and various things that they want to get done, and they can't get it done because you can't seem to squeeze that extra dollar out with all the expenses that you have to pay, each and every month, and your wages being as flat as they are. So that's why it's a good thing for the overall economy. And I think people increasingly are getting that, and politicians increasingly are looking at income inequality as a real issue. And, of course, unions have been on that issue for a long time, and it's good to see that it's finally getting some attention.
It is absolutely great to see that that's happening. And I strongly encourage everybody, listen, don't believe me just because I'm on the radio. Do your own homework. There's a lot of great places where you can look this up. You can talk to people who are understanding. Get past the political, back and forth and shenanigans and stuff like that, and think about it and talk to people about it. It's a good thing. But again, don't take my word for it. Go out and do your own homework. Make sure you're registered to vote and you take part in the process. Doug, what else are you working on now, brother?
We're keeping our eye on the University of California, AFSCME, Local 3299 out there. They've set a strike date for March 24th. 13,000 healthcare workers there trying to get a fair contract. The last time they were up against a strike deadline for other workers at UC, they were able to reach an agreement and avert the strike. So hopefully that's what will happen now. But we're keeping our eye on that. And we also try to highlight other stories that might not seem earth-shatteringly important on their own, but stories like the Teamster bus strike in Burlington, Vermont, and in Denver, where Super Shuttle bus drivers, the company that owns that, is imposing a 30% wage cut on those drivers, which will make many of them eligible for public assistance if they have to take that cut. So we like to highlight those stories just to let people know that all across this country, working people are struggling for justice, economic justice, social justice, and they're still out there fighting a good fight, as Americans always do. And we're trying to cover that at Workers Independent News. So I just urge people to check us out at laborradio.org. Do what you can to support us and give us your tips and news ideas, and we'll keep watching to the best of our ability what's happening to working families coast to coast.
There you go. Doug, we appreciate your time. Now, a few other questions for you, and this is important. Do you think people are starting to understand why we're expanding the minimum wage, why we're raising the minimum wage, why the president is saying, you know, all those people who have been classified as managers who really aren't managers, they should be getting overtime pay that they deserve. The same thing. Do you think people are getting it? Do you think they understand?
I actually think they are, Charles, and that's a very important thing that the president is doing, expanding those overtime rules. The wage cutoff for overtime now is $455 a week, and that's old. That's years old, so that's not even realistic. So he's raising that to make millions more workers eligible for the overtime pay that they should be getting. And that's absolutely consistent with the struggle of working families everywhere to get some social and economic justice. And nobody's asking for a free ride here. I mean, we're just asking for, a simple justice, get rewarded properly for a hard day's work. And that's what the president is trying to do by expanding this. SEIU's president the other day, Mary Kay Henry, said that is good for the general economy, and she's right about that. Yeah. And that's the message overall, that is all this time I spend on working issues and reporting these things, it becomes more and more clear to me that what's good for working families and working people in this country is also good for America as a whole and good for the economy as a whole.
Yeah, and we talk about productivity rates going through the roof over the last 50 years in this country. Productivity rates have gone through the roof. American workers, they do a great job. They work hard. Now, we keep hearing our Republican friends talk about, we should pay you for your performance. Well, okay. So I'll tell you what. You pay us for our performance. Productivity's gone through the roof. So should our paychecks. Just saying.
Absolutely. And, in other countries, Germany particularly, in the works council setups that they have working people represented on the boards of these companies. So when decisions are made about compensation and about productivity and about expansion and all of that, workers have an actual voice in that. And that's what we need to get to in this country. If we're going to really be free Americans with a real power to control our own country and our own government, working people need a lot more power, and they need a fair break and a fair deal. And that's what unions have been advocating for many, many years. And that's why I'm such a staunch pro-union guy, because I see that, that's what unions exist for. And to this day, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says if you're in a union, you get paid a couple $100 more a week than the person who's not in a union. So there are benefits in organizing, and that's one way we can get to some economic and social justice in this country. And the country will be better off and stronger for it if we are able to win this battle. Right.
And just don't forget, Senator Corker, as he's vilifying Volkswagen for wanting to have a works council and working with their employees, at the same time, it's Volkswagen who's paying those folks a decent wage. Senator Corker's trying to take credit for it. It's not him. He wants you to work for less. That's another story in of itself. But we'll talk about that more sometime soon. Doug, we appreciate your time. We look forward to talking to you soon. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
Hello, I'm Marc Boulanger. International pressure is building on the organization which regulates international football to act on the treatment of migrant workers in Qatar. Qatar is building the facilities for the World Cup of Football scheduled for 2022. The Executive Committee of FIFA, the body which runs global football, is scheduled to meet on March 20th. Just ahead of the meeting, the International Trade Union Confederation, the ITUC, has released a report describing the horrendous working conditions endured by construction workers in Qatar. One of the anti-worker regulations it points to is the so-called kafala system, which ties workers to the employer who brought them into the country. Sharon Burrow is the General Secretary of the ITUC.
Qatar is a modern-day slave state. Workers are encouraged to go there. They're invited in to come and work to help build this incredibly wealthy state of Qatar. They arrive to find their contracts are torn up. They're lucky to be paid half of the wages they were promised. We met with workers who aren't paid at all. They haven't been paid for some 7 months. And when they actually beg the employer for money for themselves or their families back home, he'll take out his wallet and he'll give them, a few dollars. This is just unacceptable. And, of course, then at the end of their contract, or if they are under abuse or they can't work anymore for this employer, they're trapped in the country because you need the same person who owns you, the employer, to actually sign your exit visa and give back your passport. While there's only 2 places in the Gulf states who have this terrible exit visa where you are literally trapped in the country, and it doesn't matter whether you're a poor migrant worker or whether you're a professional. It's an insidious part of the kafala system that must be overcome. The choice is in the hands of the Qatari authorities. FIFA will report back to their executive in March. They've already said, after meeting with our officials, that they want labour rights in Qatar. They understand this is a risk for the game, but in the end, Qatar has a choice. They can build this incredibly wealthy nation and give dignity and rights to workers, or they can build it off the back of enslaved workers.
It has been 3 years since the military government in Burma started opening up the country and allowing some democratic reforms, including the legalization of labor unions. Now there are signs that real collective bargaining is starting to take place. Radio Labor's senior correspondent C-Marie Ainsborough reports.
Collective bargaining is starting to take root in Burma, where for years unions were illegal. Just recently, a garment workers union negotiated a contract which provided for a 20% wage increase. The Korean owners of the S1 garment factory agreed to raise the maximum monthly salary from $124 to $150 a month. The wage proposal was first developed in a collective bargaining workshop organized by Industrial. Industrial is the global union federation which represents garment workers at the world level. The members of the union at the garment factory are mostly young women. The president of the union is a woman. There are approximately 400 garment factories in Burma. Some 200,000 workers are employed in the factories, and that number is growing as more garment brands come into the country. Many companies are looking at Burma as a cheap labor country as workers in Cambodia, Bangladesh, and China fight for higher wages. In 2013 alone, 200 new factories were established in Burma. This is C-Marie Ainsborough reporting for Radio Labour.
In other news, in South Africa, a 2-month strike by platinum workers is continuing. The new union for the workers, the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU, which called the strike, says more workers have recently joined the action. However, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, says it has been contacted by workers who say they are only staying away from work because of intimidation and fear of violence. The workers broke away from a COSATU-affiliated union last year. Garment factories in Cambodia that do not meet basic international standards for working conditions are being publicly listed. The International Labour Organization, the ILO, has launched a website for its Better Factories Cambodia program. 10 factories have been placed in the lowest compliance category. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Union Edge, Labor's Talk Radio. All working families and their communities.
And you've been listening to Charles Showalter with the Union Edge Radio, reporting for Baton Rouge Labor Radio. And this is WTQT 106.1 LPFM, and Baton Rouge Labor Radio is on the air. Thank you, Hayes Carl. This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio, WTQT 106.1 LPFM. The call-in number is 225-343-1075. We're live this hour. We want to thank the Union Edge and Charles Showalter for those in-depth interviews with Politico. They're going to be coming weekly. The first hour of Baton Rouge Labor Radio. And sitting with me is Communications Director for the Louisiana Democratic Party, Kirsten Albandakis.
Good morning, Brother Mike. How are you doing?
Did I say that right?
You said it perfectly.
Yes, I bet I did.
It's a fine Irish name.
Oh, you're fine. Everybody wants to be Irish. So anyway, Kirsten, you came this morning. You wanted to talk about a bill in the Louisiana legislation up there at the Capitol on minimum wage, raising the minimum wage.
Yeah, sure. Well, we were talking about this issue a few months back when we had a resolution before our state central committee endorsing an increase to the minimum wage. That passed unanimously, and now
That's at the Democratic
Party, our governing body, which, you know, in labor you also have a governing body, I'm sure, that makes important decisions. We do as well. So that was endorsed unanimously by our governing body, and now we are looking at trying to get minimum wage legislation through the legislature. And obviously this is a challenge in this current environment, but it's important to know that 73% of Louisianians, that is a majority of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, support an increase to the minimum wage. That's a poll that was just recently done by the Louisiana Budget Project, and they found that the majority of Louisianians, again 73%, support an increase to the minimum wage of $8.50 an hour and then indexing it to inflation. So that is something we feel has broad bipartisan support, and on Thursday the House Labor and Industrial Relations Committee will consider the legislation.
Okay, you're saying index it.
Well, that was the proposal that the Louisiana Budget Project considered. So that's what we're using as far as what that we know that 73% of Louisianans support.
Okay. And, my question would be, someone working at the current minimum wage, if they did do this, would get a raise, of course. But then, say, you know, in an election year, in a federal election year, where you got people running for office, and they might, there's an outside chance they're going to raise the federal minimum wage, because I think the numbers are even higher on that.
Sure.
Am I correct?
Yeah, the federal proposal is $10.10 an hour.
No, but what I'm saying, the polling on raising.
Sure. Well, and it varies from state to state. We're not talking about, we support any increase in the minimum wage.
Okay, so my point being, if they're going to raise the federal minimum wage to $10.10, which it should be even more, but tell us, what is the point of raising it to $9 in Louisiana?
Well, I don't think that the federal minimum wage going forward is a foregone conclusion. Yes, it has a possibility of getting through the Senate, but we know John Boehner is on the record as saying he doesn't think we should have any minimum wage at all. So the chance of that getting through the current U.S. House is not great. But that's something that obviously Harry Reid's going to fight for in the Senate. Senator Landrieu is in support of a minimum wage. She's just not sure what level it should be at. So I think that this is something we should work on at two tracks. You know, we should leave no stone unturned. If this is something we can get done on the federal level for all 50 states, I think that's fantastic. But we have to worry about what's going on here in Louisiana. And the fact is, if we raise the minimum wage to just $8.50 an hour, that would provide an immediate increase for 184,000 workers in this state. It would create an estimated 1,400 new jobs and pump more than $187 million into the economy. Bobby Jindal is always talking about the great economy that he sees out there. I think a lot of workers out there don't see that, but he doesn't have a proposal on the table to create 1,400 new jobs right now. We do. We think we should do this tomorrow.
Okay. Now, the devil's advocate. Why? These are all entry-level positions. Students have them. They're going to students. They're living with mom and pop. They're using it for beer parties. They're making money for beer parties. Give us the argument.
Well, sure, that's the myth that's out there, and certainly there are a few folks who are not sustaining a family on the minimum wage, but what our research shows is that the mass majority of people who are working for $7.25 an hour, which is the current minimum wage, are supporting a family, and we believe anyone who works 40 hours a week should not have to rely on food stamps and other government assistance to provide for their family. This is about basic fairness. This is about creating an economy that works for everyone, whether you are working at McDonald's or you're the CEO of a big multinational company like the Koch brothers, who David Vitter this week, I'm sure you heard, called two of the most patriotic Americans in the history of the earth. So when I'm thinking of patriotic Americans, I think of people like George Washington, Abe Lincoln. I don't think of the Koch brothers, but I guess David Vitter is entitled to his opinion.
I can guarantee you almost that if Abe Lincoln was running for any political office in this country, that the Koch brothers would be stacking money against him, okay?
Well, sure. I think, Abe Lincoln wanted, the free exchange of labor, and I think the Koch brothers would prefer all of us be working for $7.25 an hour. So I think, again, we're on the side of working people. We're on the side of Louisiana families. David Vitter has shown where he stands. He's against raising the minimum wage. Bobby Jindal has shown where he stands. He's against raising the minimum wage. So, again, this is something 73% of Louisianians support. Unfortunately, we have leaders in the state, Republican leaders, who don't see the wisdom of 73% of Louisianians.
So, how many people on the committee that is going to look at this? Monday, you said, right?
It's actually Thursday.
Thursday.
Yes.
Are you, well, another question while you're looking at that. Do you anticipate a crowd at the Capitol for this?
Well, I certainly hope so, and that would be my charge to your listeners out there. If they are able to take a paid leave day or an unpaid leave day, I know those are going away in corporate America. If you're able to come out to the Capitol on Thursday, I think it's important that people make their voices heard on this issue. We need to make Baton Rouge responsive to what the people of this state want for a change instead of what the big corporations want. So, again, Thursday, if you come out to the Capitol, the committees, the Labor and Industrial Relations Committee, that's chaired by Herbert Dixon, who is a Democrat and is sponsoring one of the pieces of legislation they're going to be talking about. So we've got, I'd have to look and see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 members of the committee. If you go to our website, and there is, on our homepage, there's information about how to connect with and contact all 16 of the members of this committee very easily and make your voice heard. So I think if you can either go to our website, that's louisianademocrats.org, or come to the Capitol on Thursday and make your voices heard to the 16 committee members and let them know that there are thousands of Louisianians who would benefit from this, and it's important to, again, create an economy that works for all Louisianians, not just the tippy-top 1%.
Okay. So, what are the chances?
Well, the chances, I think, are quite good. Again, anything that has broad bipartisan appeal, I think we have a definite chance. Obviously, Governor Jindal has made his opinion known on this, but keep in mind, when George Bush was president and Bobby Jindal was in Congress, he voted to increase the minimum wage. Now he says it's waving the white flag. I don't know what's changed in the interim to make Bobby Jindal think that raising the minimum wage is waving the white flag, so to say. But
it's presidential aspiration.
Well, that has changed indeed, and indeed the man who's sitting in the White House has changed. So I think, again, you're right. Bobby Jindal probably can't support this because he's trying to run for president. His focus is elsewhere. But I think if we see a lot of people at the Capitol speaking out, a lot of people talking in their communities about this issue, we'll see movement on this. Because
not to cut you off, but the legislature has pretty much kowtowed to Bobby Jindal, his every want and need, for 5 years. Am I wrong here?
Well, that is what we saw for the first term, but I think what you're seeing now is folks realize Bobby Jindal's toxic.
I'm not seeing it. I mean, I'm seeing he's toxic, but I'm not seeing
keep in
anything
mind,
different.
His tax plan, his ALEC-inspired tax plan that he tried to shove through the legislature last year was dead on arrival. And it was because Republicans opposed it, Democrats opposed it, the faith community opposed it, even the business community ended up coming out against it. So what we're seeing is Bobby Jindal can see the light. We just have to make our voices heard.
We're talking to Kirsten Albantakis, Communication Director with the Louisiana Democratic Party. We're on WTQT 106.1 LPFM. And if you want to give us a call here at Baton Rouge Labor Radio, got a question for Kirsten, 225-343-1075. If you oppose a minimum wage, give us a call. If you're for it, give us a call. If you need information, this is the person to ask. 225-343-1075. Our phone lines are open.
Good morning, Louisiana. Give us a call. Let us know what you think.
Well, you know, you'd be surprised. We've got a lot of listeners out of state also. But anyway, yeah, it's you know, even you take a governor like Chris Christie. He signed to raise the minimum wage in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
And he's also expanding access to affordable care by accepting the Medicaid dollars.
Which, you know, I guess to get off a little bit of the subject here, former Governor Edwin Edwards, he is one of my pet projects would be, and it only makes sense, and he's for it, the high-speed rail from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. And I don't see how that doesn't make sense in anybody's mind. Baton Rouge is not the Baton Rouge of the 1970s or 60s. We've got a multicultural bunch of people here, and people that are making good money, convenience stores, in these plants, in these chemical industry. And that high-speed rail, you got the Essence Festival, the Jazz Festival, the Mardi Gras, you got the LSU, and you got that Yahoo Country Festival they do down here, I think, in the spring. But I'm saying back and forth, and people would shop back and forth, and people would live in Baton Rouge going to Mardi Gras, taking a high-speed rail to save $300 a day on a hotel.
Sure. I think anytime we can invest in transit and infrastructure, number one, that creates good-paying, family-sustaining jobs. And it also creates economic opportunity in all of the places, all the communities where that transit happens to reach. New Orleans, Baton Rouge, if it stops in locations between the 2 points. Look, anybody who's ever been stuck on the causeway will be in support of this proposal.
Now, what I'm saying is that candidate for the 6th Congressional District of Congress, former Governor Edwin Edwards, brought that up. And I don't see how, I don't even know if that money's retrievable, that $80 million.
Well, unfortunately, we'd have to look at that. Jindal's done that on several occasions.
Right.
He turned
Just
down
gave
money
the money
for
away.
broadband infrastructure that would help rural communities connect to the internet and help create economic opportunity in these communities.
Base.
Sure. And now it's a couple years later, and people are going to Senator Landrieu and other folks and saying, "Can we get that money back?" And unfortunately, she has to tell them, "No, that money is gone.
It's
that was
gone.
part of the
They
stimulus."
gave it to another state.
So that's an unfortunate choice where Jindal put his political aspirations ahead of what is best for the people of this state, people in rural communities, people in urban communities.
And with all fairness, the legislature went right along with him on that.
I think maybe that was a few years ago. If that decision was up again now, I think they might think a little bit differently.
Well, I mean, what would make their thinking clearer? I mean, I don't understand it. He's the same guy doing the same thing, and they, for whatever reasons, didn't want to lose road money in their districts, or maybe a parking spot at the Capitol even. What makes this different, Kirsten?
Well, I think, again, look at Jindal's popularity after he's slashed more funding from higher ed than any other state in the country. He has privatized our charity and university hospitals, and now the status of those is in doubt. As soon as he leaves, those hospitals are going to probably go under. So I think people are looking at what Jindal has done. They look at his ratings, quite frankly, and they decide this is a guy that I do not want to associate myself with. That's why we see this fiscal hawk contingent within the Republican caucus who is trying to hold Bobby Jindal to his word that he said he was going to be fiscally responsible. These budgets, for example, the budget that he introduced this session isn't balanced. It's tens of millions of dollars out of balance already. And, all we're asking is for Bobby Jindal to do the right thing and be fiscally responsible. One of the things that would help with that is obviously an increase in the minimum wage. That would generate a lot more economic activity, more tax dollars, and it would also benefit the economy. And another thing that we're looking for him to do is accept those federal Medicaid dollars.
This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio, and we're talking with Kirsten Avantakis, Communications Director with the Louisiana Democratic Party. If you want to give her a call, and you can call 225-343-1075. She'll take your call. I'm just hoping you're right.
I am too.
That the people have had enough of this. Bobby Jindal definitely is not doing the best for the constituency of this state. I'll throw out another one. The Medicaid expansion, which, here's the thing that I don't think people get. It's just like the high-speed rail money, which I can go out here and I can guarantee you, I can talk to people over 50. Oh, we don't need that train. We don't have people 20-something wanting to go to New Orleans and party that's on the highway driving back, I mean, it's there. That's life. People want to go to New Orleans and enjoy the culture there. And people want to come from New Orleans over here. And but you take the Medicaid expansion, and that money's going to go away sooner or later.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be there forever. And I'm told by Ed Parker with the AFSCME union that there's already a big hole in the Medicaid money now.
Sure. That's a part of our budget that Bobby Jindal has kind of not made a priority. And we think bringing those dollars in would be beneficial for everyone. There was a study, again, this is Louisiana Budget Project, as well as, I believe, the Legislative Fiscal Office, which is a nonpartisan group that serves the legislature. They found it would save a minimum of $100 million in our state budget. That's money that could go to higher ed. That's money that could go to expand other programs in Medicaid. For example, the waiver program that helps people get services in their home for folks who are individuals with disabilities. So it's really kind of a sin that we're doing, that we're even talking about this issue. Republican governors, including Chris Christie, which you mentioned, Rick Snyder in Michigan, Tom Corbett in Pennsylvania, John Kasich in Ohio, Jan Brewer in Arizona, have all said this makes financial sense, this is the right thing to do, and they've gone ahead and done it. And unfortunately, Bobby Jindal has not seen the light. So what we're actually talking about doing this session, it's Senator Nevers of Washington Parish. His proposal would take those federal dollars. We're not expanding Medicaid. We're going to take those federal Medicaid dollars and we're going to allow folks to use that money to buy insurance on the exchange, the same way 45,000 people have already done.
The Arkansas model.
Absolutely. It's the Arkansas model. We're going to modify it to make it make sense here in Louisiana. And we're also talking about doing that as a constitutional amendment. We're not messing around with Bobby Jindal.
Let's vote on it.
Exactly. Let the people decide. Let the people of Louisiana decide. Do they want this for their family members? Do they want this for their neighbors? Do they want this for their hospitals? One of the things that Chairman John Bell Edwards has been saying rather effectively is, look, if a hospital goes under, it doesn't go under just for poor people. That goes under for everybody in that community. And our rural hospitals need these federal Medicaid dollars in order to keep moving forward. And this is something that makes sense. So we hope people make their voices heard here in Baton Rouge. The legislators here do respond when they hear from their actual constituents. They change minds quite often. So I think it's important for people to actually, if they have a story where they're in that Jindal gap, where they're not qualifying for Medicaid, but they don't qualify for the subsidies on the exchange, call your legislator. Let them know what's happening to you and the real impact that this is happening on them, because I think that's very important.
Now, the Medicaid expansion, Kirsten, you've got people out here say, well, you know, the welfare programs, this, that, the other, the SNAP cards, look what happened over at Walmart, you know, they stole all the money off the SNAP cards and all of that. But this is not money for people that are not working.
Absolutely, you're right.
This is money for people that are working that can't afford health insurance.
Absolutely. That's right. We're talking about working people who earn too much for the conventional Medicaid program. So we're taking care of the the poorest of the poor,
right.
And then we're taking care of people who make 100 to 138% of poverty. They're able to purchase health insurance through the exchange and get a subsidy. But people who make up to the poverty level, you know, maybe $12,000 a year or something like that, people who are working cannot get health insurance on the exchange because they don't qualify for a subsidy.
They don't make enough money.
Exactly. And they're not, and they were supposed to be covered under the Medicaid expansion. Jindal has rejected that. So we want to make sure that's 240,000 people in this state. 240,000 working people. And I'd be willing to bet most of your listeners, if they're not in the Jindal Gap, they know someone who is a family member,
without
a neighbor.
A doubt.
And these people are. It's not that they're those 240,000 people. Unfortunately, some of them are going to get sick. Some of them are going to go to the hospital.
We're not bulletproof.
Exactly. Some of them may get in an accident and go to the emergency room. They don't have insurance. Guess who pays for that, Mike?
Yeah, we do.
You and I do.
You know?
So why don't we take this money? These are our tax dollars that we have sent to Washington. Why don't we bring some of that money back for a change and use it to invest in the people of this state? It'll be good for worker productivity if they're healthy. It'll be good for the state. It'll be good for the economy. It's going to create jobs, these good healthcare jobs that sustain a family. You know, Vance McAllister, the Republican congressman from the 5th District, has been a champion on this issue, and that's because he's a small business owner, and he knows having people covered makes sense.
Now, Vance McAllister, that's the newly elected congressman, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So when he was running, he did not say that.
Yes, he did come out.
Did he say that?
He did. He
because
came out and
the only thing I heard was that, hey, you know what? It's the law. It's, you know, this, that, the other. Mm-hmm. And that's all I heard. Tell us how Vance McAllister...
Well, sure. I mean,
you're more informed on it than I am.
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't know that that's true.
You're getting a check.
You're right. I do get paid to know about these things. Well, Congressman McAllister, when he was running and he was in the runoff, came out in support of Medicaid expansion. He said, look, the Affordable Care Act is the law of the land. You and I may not like it. I like it. Maybe he doesn't. But he said it would be a crime to not accept these federal dollars to help the people of his district. His district has... I believe 20% of the residents, the adults in his district, lack health insurance. That's the most of any of the congressional districts in the state. So he said it would be ridiculous for him to not support that. And, of course, his opponent, Neil Reiser, attacked him mercilessly for that. There were commercials and ads calling him, the Koch brothers, were attacking McAllister for supporting, quote-unquote, Obamacare. And guess what? He won on Election Day. So that's something that people should keep in mind, that Medicaid expansion, per se, is not necessarily a losing issue in this state. As a matter of fact, we know that the majority of Louisianians do support this because, they know folks who are in this Jindal Gap.
And, you know, for whatever reason, Kirsten, we're talking with Kirsten Albantakis. Close. Communications Director with the Louisiana Democratic Party. Number's 225-343-1075 if you want to call in. What I was going to say is that I don't understand with the numbers that you're telling me and the numbers of uninsured and the polling data, how this is just not a slam dunk.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, working people in this state, for the most part, don't have lobbyists. You know, the Koch brothers, they formed this group, Americans for Prosperity. They're lobbying very strongly in this state, trying to get legislators to sign their pledge to reject Medicaid expansion. They have millions and billions of dollars behind them. Working people, unfortunately, a lot of times don't have time to come to the Capitol. They don't have time or money to pay a lobbyist and come and talk to legislators and wine and dine legislators on their behalf. But, again, if people make their voices heard, that's the most effective communication you can have with a legislator.
Phone, email, those little cards they send out.
Sure. And if you go to our website, again, it's louisianademocrats.org. If you go to our website, there's a section called Raise the Wage. If you click there, you'll be able to contact the members of this committee, 16 members of this committee, and let them know where you stand on this issue. And it takes maybe 30 seconds for folks to do that.
Okay. We're going to take a break. We're talking with Kirsten Albantakis, Communications Director with the Louisiana Democratic Party, and we'll be right back. This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio.
Where you stare and straight into the lens. Just a Polaroid shot someone took on the spot. No beginning, no end. It's just a moment in time. Can't have back. You never left, but your bags were packed just in case. My favorite picture of you is bent and it's faded and it's pinned to my wall. Oh, and you were so angry, it's hard to believe we were lovers at all. There's a fire in your eyes, got your heart on your sleeve, curse on your lips, but all I can see is beautiful. My favorite picture of you is the one where your wings are showing. Oh, and your arms are crossed, fists are clenched, not gone but going. Oh, stand up, angel, who won't back down. Nobody's fool, nobody's clown. You're smarter than them. My favorite picture of you is the one where it hasn't rained yet. Oh, and as I recall, there came a winter's fall and we got soaking wet. 1,000 words in the blink of an eye, hammer loves you, and so do I. Click. My favorite picture of you is the one where you're staring straight into the lens.
We're back. This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio. We're on WTQT 106.1 LPFM. And for the last half hour, as the first half hour, we've had Kirsten Avantakis, the communications director of the Louisiana Democratic Party. Kirsten, I guess this last hour we didn't really need you come on. You were talking about the minimum wage increase proposal in the Louisiana legislature, and I guess for the last half hour we really need to bear down on that because that's what you come to talk about. And I mean, I'm going to ask you again, what do you think the chances are of this getting through committee, getting to the floor, and Governor Jindal signing it?
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. There are 16 members of this committee, and this is important to know. There was some legislation that did not make it out of committee last session that would have been extremely damaging for public sector workers. They were trying to prevent the collection of dues. It was extremely punitive, aimed at public school teachers and other public school workers. That legislation did not make it out of committee because Democrats and Republicans stood together. So what did Bobby Jindal do? He didn't get the answer he wanted out of the committee last session. So he has stacked the committee with his folks this time around, obviously, because he wants a better result. But the fact is, these folks are not going to be beholden to Bobby Jindal. He's never going to be on the ballot here again in Louisiana. He doesn't really care what happens here. Unfortunately, he's more focused on what he's trying to do in 2016. So we think that these legislators, if people contact the committee members and let them know where they stand, we do think that this can come out of committee and go to the floor. And we want to have that debate, frankly, because the people of Louisiana deserve a conversation on this, at the very least. Because, unfortunately, the needs of working families in this state have been neglected for far too long. We've been talking about what's good for big corporations, big industries that get millions and millions and millions of dollars in tax credits. Those are yours and our tax dollars that have to make up for the fact that big companies are forgoing tax obligations. So why don't we do something for a change for working people in this state? And that's why we want to have this conversation. We want folks to show up at the Capitol on Thursday for the committee hearing, and we also want them to go to our website. That's LouisianaDemocrats.org. There's a section called Raise the Wage, and we want folks to make their voices heard. We can, again, contact the committee members. We've also got things you can communicate on social media. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get their news from traditional sources. Now they get it from Facebook, or they get it from Twitter, or they get it even from Instagram or something like that. So we encourage people to make their voices heard on social media and let their friends and family know that this is happening again this week, Thursday, at the committee hearing in Baton Rouge here at the state capitol. We're going to be talking about raising the wage, and Louisiana deserves a raise. I think the last hour they talked about the productivity gains that have happened since the last time we raised the minimum wage. We should be going to a level where people can actually sustain a family. So that's what we're focused on for Thursday.
Okay. We're talking with Kristen Avantakis, Communication Director of the Democratic Party. This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio. If you want to call in, 225-343-1075. All that's great, and hopefully people will activate. And I've seen this work. It was a few years back. They had a plumbing bill they wanted to strip the plumbing license from all the licensed plumbers. That's not easy to get. I mean, they just don't hand those things out like Halloween candy or something. And we all went to the Capitol, and it was immediately deferred in committee, crushed. And so, do you have any certain groups that are coming out, or?
Well, obviously, we will be working with our brothers and sisters in labor, but we're also working with the faith community.
Are you asking labor members to come out?
Well, I won't. I will let the folks who are in leadership talk to their members. I don't dictate to folks. I follow chain of command.
You just throw it out there, right?
No, but I would hope that folks in labor are communicating.
Are you
with
demanding that my local members come?
I would hope that you would demand that, Mike.
Hey, I'm not a boss either, you know.
Well, if only we knew somebody.
They would listen to you before they would me, Kirsten.
Well, maybe I'll reach out to Neil and give him a ring. No, this is important, right? You know,
it is.
And I think probably most of your members don't make minimum wage, right?
No.
You know, but they know a rising tide lifts all boats, and if we increase the bottom, that's going to inure benefits to everybody up the chain.
You know, if you got a po' boy shop, somebody walking down the road making a couple of bucks more an hour got a heck of a lot better chance of coming in and buying a fry and a drink.
Absolutely.
You know, in a po' boy or something.
Yeah, I mean, families, they're going to go out to their local pizza shop. They're going to go to the movies. They're going to do the home improvement projects that they've been putting off, and that is beneficial to everybody in that community. And guess what? Even this is sad to say, Walmart would benefit from increasing the minimum wage.
Walmart would benefit more than anyone else.
Because guess what? Most of their employees, the only place they can afford to shop is Walmart. So I think that people would spend more money at places like that because, unfortunately, they're not making enough right now.
Well, you know, and they are on a bus route, you know, but it is just, it's a shame that we've got a fight like this with the poll numbers, as you say, 73%, and the polls mean nothing. It's more like you said, the big corporate types. And, you know, as you know, Kirsten, I am an independent. I'm not a Democrat nor a Republican. It's hard to vote. I mean, the Republicans make it almost impossible for me to vote for them with their position on stuff like this.
Sure. And there are Republicans who, Bobby Jindal used to be one of them, who actually voted in support of increasing the minimum wage.
You know, I remember that, and I was kind of shocked at the time. His mentor, Mike Foster, I was no big fan of. Now, with that said, you know, the man, he did training, and he did the Baton Rouge Community College. He did a lot of good stuff that, you know, you give credit where credit's due, but he was one of the most anti-union governors that I can recall. And I felt that stick personally back in the 90s, you know. But, you know, it's a shame, but he did leave sort of a legacy with the Baton Rouge Community College, this, that, the other. And I don't see what Bobby Jindal could hang his hat on.
Exactly. And as far as being anti-working people, Jindal has probably gone even further than former Governor Foster.
Yeah, you know, Sam, long-term Speaker of the House years ago, said that, you know, a jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to build one. And there's never been a more fitting statement toward Bobby Jindal.
Sure.
And he's not a carpenter.
Yeah, he's been dismantling our public universities. He's been dismantling our charity hospitals and selling them off. And we're going to be, unfortunately, dealing with the consequences of those decisions for many, many years after he has gone on to do whatever whatever he decides to do, whether it's running a think tank or something like that. So people need to stand up and make a stand now. They can't wait until next year. They can't wait until the year after that to decide to get engaged and get involved. Now is the time, and we can make changes that are going to perhaps roll back some of the stuff that this governor has done, and we can do them now, but only if people make their voices heard in Baton Rouge. Again, if you go to our website, LouisianaDemocrats.org, you can sign up for email updates. We'll let you know every week what's going on in the legislature, and you can, again, we make it very easy for people to...
Very
It
easy.
takes 30
you guys
seconds.
are working your butts off.
Well, we try. We try.
I can't recall at any time that I've ever seen more activity at that Democratic Party, and that's been for years.
Well, it's necessary. Unfortunately, we need to show folks where we stand. People maybe in the past they thought maybe Democrats, Republicans, you're all the same. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And as a matter of fact, I used to be one of those people. I was one of the people that thought, after the glory Clinton years of where, folks, they were paying hiring bonuses for jobs at McDonald's, in the Clinton years, and then the Gore-Bush election came around, and honestly, they both didn't seem like they were that different. And then the Bush years came around, and I realized that Republicans and Democrats, maybe there is a difference there.
And it's a shame. You take a Republican from this area, Bodie White. I got to say, whether I agree with, I don't agree with everything he does, but it looks like he does have the pulse of his constituents down, regardless of what you agree with what he's doing. He did, with a lot of pressure, vote with the workers on the plumbing bill. And, I don't agree with everything he's doing now, but I will say that he's representing his constituents.
Sure.
And that's what it's about. And he's feeling heat from the St. George area, and he's responding to it. And I'm putting this up as an example.
Sure. Well, and that's all we would ask of our elected officials is at least take the time to listen to your constituents and be responsive to their needs. Again, we've said this number before on the show, and we're going to say it again. 73% of Louisianians, that is Republicans, that is Democrats, that is independents, support this. It makes sense.
Do you have the numbers broken down, independents?
I don't have them handy, but I could probably get them for you by the end of the show. It was the majority of Republicans and independents. It wasn't, obviously, Democrats supported it in much higher percentages, but it was the majority of all of those groups.
Now, someone working 5 days a week, got the kids in child care, can't really miss a day's work. How can they get involved?
Sure, well...
And I'm saying a lot of them don't know who their representative is or their senator, let alone the committee members. How could a person get involved saying, I can do this, it'll take 2 minutes, and then I can get the kids to child care and be to work?
Sure. Well, I think what you said first off is know who your elected officials are. If you go to legis, that's legis.la.gov, if that's the main website and portal for the legislature, you can type in your address and zip code, and it'll tell you who your state representative is and who your state senator is. That's job one. You should know those folks. You should go and connect with them on social media. A lot of them have Facebook pages. A lot of them have Twitter. And a lot of legislators are very responsive on these social media sites because they know that it's not just an email from a constituent. That's a public statement. And folks need to know that they're being heard. So a lot of times people will be more responsive on Twitter and Facebook than they might be even to an email. So again, go to legis.la.gov, connect with your legislators on social media. And again, we would encourage you to also go to our website, LouisianaDemocrats.org. That's LouisianaDemocrats.org. Sign up for our email updates. We send them out probably once or twice a week, letting folks know what's happening in Baton Rouge and what they can do to get involved. Again, you can email your legislators. You can call your legislators. You can go to their district offices. A lot of times their district offices might be more accessible to you than Baton Rouge would be. And also, another thing that we're doing this session is we're doing phone banks all across the state where volunteers are coming in either in the afternoon or the evening if they'd like, and they make an hour or two of phone calls to folks in their neighborhoods, in their communities, letting them know what's happening in the state. And that's something that people can do anywhere in the state. We can set them up virtually to help us make phone banks, make phone calls into their communities to inform their neighbors.
Can do this from home.
Sure. Absolutely. And an hour or two a week, we're not asking a whole lot from folks. An hour or two a week. If we have 100 people doing an hour or two a week, we have 1,000 people doing an hour or two a week. Very quickly, you can see that this is how we're going to make progressive change in this state.
I see why they sent you down here. Well, I hope. I mean, there are people working for minimum wage down here. And like I said, I ran into one. I'll relate this story again. I was on the road, and I really didn't want to stop and eat. I wanted to go home, but I needed something. And so I stopped at this chicken place, and I said, I'm going to get an order of fries and a Diet Coke. And so I went in, and I ordered the fries, and I went up, and for those fries was $3.29 for an order of French fries. And I told the guy, I said, man, that's kind of weighty here, Come on, $3.29. And the guy told me, he says, when the minimum wage goes up, they're going to go higher. Now, I don't know how they could go much higher for a bag of French fries, okay? But, that's what the other side will use. And they had another place right down the street that I'm sure they've got to compete with. But that's the argument against it. Tell us something about that.
Well, labor represents represents a slice of what you pay when you're buying your bag of chips, or you're buying a hot dog or a hamburger labor represents a percentage of what goes into making that, but it's also the inputs like the actual food products. It's the mortgage that the guy is paying on, or the rent that they're paying on. Those are all things that go in, and folks have looked at that. To increase the minimum wage, I think, to a level like $15 an hour for a fast food restaurant would raise the cost of a Big Mac by mere cents. And I think that's something that everybody understands. Well, sure, I'd pay a little bit more to know that the guy behind the counter is making a living wage.
Can buy an order of fries.
Sure. And it helps the business as well, because when folks are better paid, they have benefits, they stay at that job, and the turnover is much, much less than you would see at a lower wage place. Costco is the classic example of a company that is making money by doing right by their employees. All of their folks, I think, after a number of months, have health insurance. They make a living wage, many, many times more what a Walmart stock worker would make. And when you go into a Costco, you can find people to help you. There are people on all of the registers. I know a lot of folks. I haven't been in a Walmart in a very long time, but what I hear is, empty shelves. You can't find somebody to check you out.
Well, I was in there the other day. I can tell you.
And from what I hear is the service is not great in Walmart because they can't keep people for a number of years and have people grow into the position and grow into their customer service because they can't pay people well. And Costco does it another way.
Whoa, they can't pay people well?
Well, they can. They choose not to because that's the corporate philosophy is unfortunately...
The Walmart model.
Sure. And the Walton family has benefited enormously from that, and all we're saying is that workers should benefit from a little bit of it too.
Should grow with the company.
Absolutely.
Could you imagine an employee that went to work at Walmart, say 15 years ago, if they would have grown with the company, they would be doing great.
Sure, investing in your employees makes sense ultimately for the bottom line, and increasing the minimum wage will make sure that all employers have to do it. It won't be this competition for the lowest wage. I think this is something that's well overdue. And you were asking earlier for the numbers on Democrats and Republicans. 86% of Democrats support increasing the minimum wage. That's not surprising. But 62% of Republicans do. That's 62% of Republicans. Men, 66%, and then 80% of women, that's not surprising, 80% of women, we know a lot of women are working in these low-wage jobs, support increasing the minimum wage. And guess what? Who do we know shows up to vote? Women. So, folks, legislators, if you're out there listening, this is a no-brainer. Do this. Your constituents will love you for it.
And that's, like I said, that's overwhelming polling numbers. And I mean, it's not, you're not looking at one PPP poll or a Democratic-leaning poll. This is Gallup. This is all of the polls are coming with this number. And it's just shocking to me how a lot of these politicos live and die by polling numbers, and they can't read this. They can't read this. I would like to know how many Tea Party members were polled in that. It couldn't have been that many, but it's just amazing to me what you got to do to get something done around here.
Well, it's not going to be easy, but I think, again, if people contact their legislators and let them know where they stand on this issue, unfortunately, the legislators, they're hearing from lobbyists, from the Koch brothers, lobbyists from Big Oil and Big Gas every single day. Those folks are taking them out to lunch. They're taking them out for happy, so they know where they stand. They don't know how their constituents feel, and unfortunately, there's the perception that their constituents are much more conservative than they actually are. Even Tea Party folks, I've actually been to a couple of Tea Party meetings. I don't know if you've been. I like to hear the other side and know what they're saying. And there was one last summer with Jeff Landry, a Tea Party meeting, and it was very interesting to me. They were all spun up about Obamacare and all of that. But then when they got to the Q&A portion of the meeting with former Congressman Landry, a lot of the concerns that these folks were having were things like, I'm worried about my TRICARE. They're cutting the TRICARE is the veterans' health care. They're cutting my veterans' health care. I'm worried about my Medicare. They're cutting my Medicare. All of these folks had concerns about government programs that were being cut.
That they were against.
That they, yeah. And so I believe, and maybe this is optimistic and Pollyanna-ish of me, but I believe a lot of these Tea Party folks are closet populists. They just don't realize it because they've been getting the onslaught of conservative media, conservative talk radio, Fox News in their ear for the past decade. They don't realize that they are populists. They are Democrats. They are working people. They benefit from government programs like TRICARE, like Medicare, like Social Security. These programs sustain our communities in Louisiana.
Well, as far as, I don't mind having a discussion with someone that disagrees with me, but a guy told me once that if you stand there and you argue with an idiot and somebody walks by and hear you arguing, they don't know which one's the idiot. So, I'm going to kind of stay away from that Tea Party thing because it just makes no sense to me. Sure. None whatsoever.
Well, and folks, they don't have time to go out. They don't have time to go out and search out the facts. We're giving you the facts this morning. The minimum wage needs to go up in this state. It's going to provide thousands of jobs. It's going to benefit 184,000 workers. It's going to pump $187 million into the economy. Those are facts. That's an independent researcher found that. So contact your legislators. Thursday is the hearing on the minimum wage.
And where can they find out information again?
Sure. It's LouisianaDemocrats.org. Go to our website, again, LouisianaDemocrats.org. You can sign up for email updates and contact your legislators.
And that is Kirsten Alvantakis, Communication Director of the Louisiana Democratic Party. This is Baton Rouge Labor Radio, WTQT 106.1 LPFM, and We want to thank the Union Edge Talk for the first hour of our broadcast with Charles Showalter, and we'll be airing that every week from now. And you can also pick up rebroadcasts on Facebook, Michael D. Day, or Baton Rouge Local Union 198. You can pick up rebroadcasts there, or you can go to YouTube, Baton Rouge Labor Radio. Kirsten, we've got a saying on Baton Rouge Labor Radio that if you work for free, you'll always have a job. I'm sure you agree with that. I'm Michael D. Day. Next week, Neil Paul Miller will be in, and I don't know who his guest will be, but I'm sure it'll be a good show. So catch us next week at the same time on Baton Rouge Labor Radio, broadcast on WTQT 106.1 FM and WTQT.org. Have a good weekend.